It is Thursday, November 7th, 1 month and 1 day since Suzanne Simpson was last seen alive. I'm Robert Price, and we are coming to you live on YouTube from San Antonio, Texas, with Reaction. We are joined by three reporters who have been covering this case from the very beginning: Jordan Elder, Mariah Medina, and Yami Virgen. We'll start with you, Jordan. You just got back from the Bexar County Jail with a big breaking news, I should say, off the top. Suzanne's husband, Brad Simpson, has been charged with her murder. You were just getting back from the Bexar County Jail, where Brad is being locked up, remains in jail. What's the latest? Bring us up to speed on where things stand.
So those charges came down today. Brad Simpson was already in the Bexar County Jail on some other charges, so this one was added on. The bond has now gone up to $5 million total. So we were there because we found out through sources today that Brad Simpson was actually moved at some point today. He was taken from the Bexar County Jail about 1:15 this afternoon, and then taken to a DPS facility here in San Antonio to be questioned. Not clear what specifically about. It could have to do with these charges. It could be something different. And then he was taken back to the Bexar County Jail at about 3 o'clock. So we were stationed there, just keeping an eye on things. But definitely a big development. Obviously, it's not one that the community wanted. Kind of a...
You mean the implications of a murder charge?
Right. Like, I think our community was really pulling for Suzanne Simpson to be alive, of course. So to have this come down, I think that is starting to settle in with people now that maybe she is not coming home, which is obviously not what our community wanted for one of our own.
And we should make clear, we still do not know where Suzanne Simpson is. That's where we bring in Mariah. You've been speaking with attorneys because we know there's going to be an uphill battle for prosecutors trying a murder case without a body.
Yeah, so I talked to board-certified criminal defense attorney Shannon Locke. He is not tied to this case in any way, but he was explaining to me that there are so many different reasonable possibilities as to why somebody would disappear that aren't murder. And so he explained to me that not only does the state have to prove that Suzanne Simpson is deceased, but that her husband had murdered her. And so, you know, obviously an uphill battle. As far as we know, law enforcement sources have told us that they have not yet found her body. So that is going to definitely be an uphill battle.
And Yami, the search for Suzanne has been exhaustive. Going back 1 month, October 6th, the last time she was seen alive, they've looked at multiple locations.
Correct. So they've been looking, and this reminds me of the Patty Vaughn case. The husband, everybody has assumed the husband was the one that did it for years. The sheriff's office has said that, but there were never any charges. So here, you kind of have to wonder, on the same day that Brad's friend was in court and they lowered his bond, all of a sudden we're taking now Brad Simpson out of the Bexar County Jail. We're taking him to a DPS office. We're going to try to talk to him again, and he goes right back, and now he's charged with murder. So you kind of have to wonder what evidence they have. Just like Mariah said, most of the times they do not want to try to prosecute without a body, but you have to have enough reasonable evidence there, probable cause for you to file a murder charge. I don't know when the last time is, maybe Mariah or you remember, when was the last time that you saw a $5 million bond?
Oh.
Yeah. Extremely rare.
Extremely rare. So the searches are going on. I know at the beginning, we all were looking to see the different places that were owned by this family. Where are the properties? Right now, I think the key property that they're looking at is in Bandera. And I would assume that within the next couple of days, we're going to see them going back out to Bandera and start looking again for Suzanne's body.
So we see the social media comments. We know how the public feels about his possible guilt or lack thereof. The family has been more tight-lipped. We have interviewed on camera Suzanne's mom, Suzanne's sister, and now Jordan, we're hearing from Suzanne's oldest daughter on social media, on Instagram.
Right. So Suzanne and Brad are parents of 4 children. I believe their oldest is about 20. And she put up some extensive Instagram stories in the last few days. And she said something along the lines of, my father killed my mother in a fit of rage, and that there were issues with control. And she really spoke up about domestic violence specifically in our community and said for the longest time, this is something that people have kept quiet, and it's something we need to be open about and talk about so that lives can be saved. You could tell in the tone of those stories that she was frustrated. Obviously, I'm an oldest of 4, so I feel for her. I can't imagine what it's like to be in that scenario where your mom is missing, you don't know where she is, your father is in jail. As the oldest kid, that probably falls a lot on you. And so for her to speak out in that way, I think it was very brave, and I hope that it helps others too. Calling this to light, that domestic violence sometimes goes unspoken about in San Antonio.
Normally a staple in news gathering and murder investigations, what we rely on in telling you the news is the arrest warrant affidavit. That's where we get a lot of the nuggets that become public. We don't have access to the arrest warrant affidavit for this murder charge, do we, Mariah?
Right. So immediately after the charges were made public, I requested the arrest affidavit, and that usually details what probable cause law enforcement had to secure the arrest of that individual for that particular charge. And in this case, I was told that per orders of Judge Escalona, that would be under seal for 30 days. Now, I did talk to Shannon Locke, who is a board-certified criminal defense attorney, just restating this. He doesn't have any connection to this case, but he explained to me that is very rare that it is filed under seal. And so he says that something that tells him is that the state has evidence or leads or investigative details that they don't want the defendant, in this case Brad Simpson, or his defense attorney to know about just yet. And I did reach out to his defense attorney, and his defense attorney obviously said no comment. But it's going to be very interesting when that is unsealed, because obviously they filed these other charges and we're just now seeing that murder charge. So it's going to be interesting to find out what new details led them to believe that they had enough probable cause to make this arrest for murder. It's so much so that a judge signed off on it.
I mean, for instance, the knowledge that we have in the public of the witness, the neighbor who across the street saw him restraining his wife the night that she went missing. We only know that because of the arrest warrant affidavit. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You may recall last month, law enforcement and all those volunteers spent days, 4 or 5 days out at that landfill. They needed a search warrant, and that was also sealed, I believe. So we also don't know what evidence prompted them to look so hard at that landfill.
Definitely, and something about search warrants is that they do have a lot of information, and whenever they return those search warrants, they file what is called a return, and that's when it becomes a public record. And so we've checked, and we have found that no returns so far have been filed yet, and we still don't know what led them to those particular locations.
Yami.
Yeah, and I wanted to mention, I pulled up the affidavit from earlier when Cotter was arrested, his best friend.
Right, yeah.
So that one, the interesting thing to me about this is it says, I learned that Brad Simpson had texted Cotter on 10/8 following, if you're in Bandera, can you haul ass and meet me at your house? I don't have much time. And then if you keep going down, he also tells him to make sure that he leaves all that, quote, shit in the pump house, especially that gun. It just leads you to believe they have a lot more, and of course, that we have yet to see. That Bandera location, I think, is going to be key. You got to think about the amount of time he had, where could he have gone, why were they at the landfill? If we remember on that affidavit, it was also saying, I think that it was the last ping from that cell phone was near a restaurant close to their home. So if that was the last place where her cell phone was, you just start thinking, how long did he have? From the point of time that you know there's a ping on that cell phone to he disappeared, then he got home, you have to kind of draw a circle as to how far he could have gone and come back.
I should mention I was actually in court on Monday for that longtime business partner James Val Cotter's bond reduction hearing. His attorneys were fuming because they had set his bond at $1 million, $500,000 each for 2 charges: prohibited weapons possession and evidence tampering. His attorney was arguing, in all my 30-plus years of practicing law, I've never seen bonds set this high for such a charge. This is outrageous. This is unconstitutional. Well, the prosecutors were arguing Val Cotter has shown a willingness to protect Brad Simpson, his longtime business partner, at all costs, and if we let him out, he's going to probably evidence tamper more, that he's going to go back out and hide more evidence. And so, I mean, you would agree, though, that that was a very stiff bond amount.
Very, very stiff bond amount. And not only that, something that that I had learned today is that the filing of this arrest affidavit might be strategic on part of the state. So the state has, I believe, 90 days for felony charges to indict the case. Otherwise, the defendant will have to usually be released on a PR bond. So that's basically go free, you know, on your own recognizance. And so you hit the nail right on the head by saying that there are millions of dollars worth of bonds in this case. So it seems as if maybe the state feels that there's some approaching deadline. So now this new charge gives them 90 more days to continue to hold Mr. Simpson. And not only that, they can always dismiss the affidavit and file it again.
Jordan?
Well, there's so many layers to this, too. Later on in the affidavit that Yami was reading a second ago, you found out that Val Cotter is accused of taking one of the guns from Brad Simpson and hiding it strategically inside a wall, I think behind a TV.
Behind the TV.
To the point where you had to have a very specific string mechanism to pull it out. Like this, it seems planned, because most people, at least in my experience, don't have places and situations like that set up specifically. So it just makes you wonder the extent of the involvement and the time, like you were saying, Yami.
Makes you wonder what else is going on that you would have that in your home. And again, the elephant in the room, this is, and people are going to be watching from all over the country.
Right.
Olmos Park, Alamo Heights, Monte Vista, that whole area is very elite. It's the old money, old names in San Antonio. So that is coming, I believe, into play also. And part of the reason why there's so much interest, other than this is a mother of four who simply disappeared, is the fact of where it is. I don't know, Robert, I mean, you grew up here also.
Right, well, so the Argyle was the club they were last spotted
Correct.
at. They released a surveillance photo, an image of her leaving the Argyle. There was supposedly some sort of confrontation or loud yelling that continued in front of the house in Olmos Park, on Olmos Drive, East Olmos Drive. I want to go back, though, and be explicit about this bond reduction hearing and the timing of all this. We should make clear that his bond, James Val Cotter, the longtime business partner, 65-year-old man, had his bond reduced today. Thursday. He was originally, the hearing was on Monday. They had a continuance so that his mom could testify on Tuesday. There was another continuance, and we're like, how long is this going to drag on? Well, sure enough, the reduction goes to what, $100,000, which is very doable because it's 10% of that.
Yeah.
And you're saying the timing is a little fishy, that it coincides with the day that Brad, his business partner, gets charged with murder.
I mean, do you find it fishy?
I think it touches on the fact that this could potentially be strategic. I mean, if his business partner is getting his bonds reduced to $100,000, I mean, I think the state is, you know, seeing what's going to potentially happen in Mr. Simpson's case and is saying, okay, we're going to add another charge where that defense attorney will have to file a separate motion to have that bond reduced, and it starts the process all over again.
And for people that don't know, I'm going to do this to you. Mariah has a law degree. She has passed the bar. So you know what you're talking about. I mean, I've been doing this for 20-some years. You literally have a law degree. How often do you see this happen? I never see it happen.
Well, it goes to say that I don't necessarily know all the whole deal of the criminal defense world, but having had a lot of experience seeing and covering these types of cases, to see a bond amount this high is very unique. And to see this play out in the way that the affidavit has been sealed, in the way that search warrants have been sealed, I've never seen this in my entire career.
Okay.
And we should mention this is on YouTube right now, and we see your comments. Mariah has been tasked with looking through your comments. Please keep them clean. And she's going to be relaying some of them, kind of putting them out to the crowd, putting them out to the panel here, and maybe we can address some of their concerns.
So a lot of them are very much, you know, sympathies and prayers that Suzanne is found. Mr. Sauceda says, this woman did not deserve this. Her husband needs to confess. It's horrible. I want to talk about something that we've heard from family members of Mr. Simpson. It seems that the sentiment has been that they're cooperating with investigators.
Oh, especially his brother. His brother's been very vocal on Facebook, updating posts saying, our brother was not raised this way. If he's not going to cooperate, we will cooperate on his behalf.
Yeah.
They've gone out of their way to be very public and saying, we do not condone this.
And I find it interesting. I mean, these are two families There are 4 children, the youngest one being 5 years old. And think about it. I mean, she had that child when she was 48 years old. You know, the other children are older. I have spoken to people that know them, and they did tell me that a lot of the arguments that were going on was also having a child very young, and they're older in life. They were not expecting this. So a lot of changes in their life. But that still, I don't understand how you see this happening. And there were a lot of questions today on Facebook. People were asking, why didn't someone come forward? I know her daughter, right, Jordan?
Said the community failed us.
Yes. Her daughter, what was the exact statements that she was making about the community?
That they saw this and they said nothing, kind of, that was the indication.
Yes, and that this is something that has gone on for so long, specifically in this community where you are silent about it and you don't talk about it if you see it, and kind of implying that maybe if someone had spoken up, maybe things could be different in this community and potentially for their family, which is so heavy for a 20-year-old when you think about being 20 years old and having to confront that.
I have a 20-year-old.
You
My
do?
20-year-old is in college doing what this young lady's doing, living their best life, and all of a sudden your mom's just gone and your dad's sitting in jail. I mean, I can't even understand what she has to be going through right now.
Now, I don't know this is mere speculation, but I would have to imagine the location of her body may be used as a bargaining chip in terms of some sort of plea deal, sentencing, or otherwise, that the only way we're really ever going to find her is if Brad leads us to her.
You know, I think somebody brought this up on Twitter where they had said, you know, at what point does sudden passion come into play? And that's obviously at the sentencing phase or punishment phase, where you can argue that this was a quote unquote crime of sudden passion and the, I guess, punishment range is reduced. But that's very rare. But in this case, who even knows if it will reach a trial? And to be honest with you, these devices that we have in our hands, that we wear on our bodies, they have a lot of data.
Yeah.
They collect a lot of data. And I don't know if the public really, and if people just generally underestimate what these things are tracking. I mean, even his truck, you know, I know law enforcement put out a surveillance video of Mr. Simpson's truck, and they were asking people, hey, if you have any video of this, but that truck has GPS data. The number of cases I've seen, I mean, even in this case in particular, the text messages, you know.
Everything. It's when you're walking around, this thing, all the apps you have open in the background are picking up your location. So unless you have those, you know, privacy settings on there, it is picking up everywhere you go up until the last second. So you have to think they have all of this, or because they can't just get it, they have to get search warrants. And sometimes I know the carriers take a long time to get those search warrants back. To us, it's like, oh my God, she's been gone a year. Why didn't they just get it? Well, they can't just get it. In order to get those search warrants, it has to go to the carrier. The carrier then has to decide if they're going to send it back. So it takes time. I mean, it takes a lot of time.
And we saw in that affidavit, Val Cotter handed his phone over, at least for a second. That's how they saw those messages with Brad Simpson. So it makes me wonder, are there other texts that we haven't seen?
Correct.
What else is there that we haven't seen that they're holding and using? Things like search history is also very intriguing to me because of the way that it's helped in other cases. And that's the part that I think stresses the community out, is the waiting. Because obviously we live in a world where you want to know everything right now, and we can't.
We may not know
We may
everything right now. Again, Patty Vaughn disappeared 26 years ago. Everybody has an idea of what happened, but the body has never been found. And that could be a reality. Her body may never be found.
And even if her body is found now, 1 month later, a lot of people drawing parallels to the Andreen McDonald
gonna
case.
say.
Enough time went by before her remains, her skeletal remains, were found that I believe the medical examiner was not able to establish a firm cause of death. He ends up getting convicted of manslaughter. Serves, I think he was sentenced to 20 years, which is the full amount that the stiffest penalty he could get. But they weren't able to prove, like, hey, he slit her throat, or hey, he shot her in the head, or hey, this happened. You know what I mean? There was just no way to tell, and that's where you reference sudden passion. the defense can start coming up with their own story because the medical examiner's autopsy can't contradict it because they don't have a fresh body.
The same with
Right.
Scott and Lacey Peterson too. That was a very high-profile case where they didn't have the body for a very long time.
But you have to wonder again what kind of evidence they do have.
Oh, I
it's-
do wonder.
Yes.
Well, so you brought up the Andreen McDonald case, and in that case, Andre McDonald was charged with tampering and these lesser offenses, and then her remains are found, and ultimately he is charged with murder.
Right.
And it goes to trial. Manslaughter is what they end up deciding on, but it just brings this, it makes it evident that it's very rare to charge without a body, because they only charged Andre after her remains were found.
Yes, so to be this early in the process, you feel confident that the DA's office will go forward with this case?
Well, let's see. I know that I did talk to a lot of people, and we talked about that. I did talk to a lot of people in law enforcement, city of San Antonio, Bexar County, and a lot of them were surprised to see Joe Gonzalez, the district attorney for Bexar County, go ahead and say, we have enough for them to go ahead and do this. I mean, I was a little surprised, but I mean, now it's
Because
done.
they have cases without a body that they
Correct.
think are strong enough to go to trial.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And yet they
We've
don't take
seen
them.
this so many times, and they don't take them. And you also have to wonder, on that first affidavit, they were talking about someone that informed them of the conversation between Brad and Mr. Cotter. So who's that person? How much more do they know? I mean, I cannot believe that nobody else knows anything other than Mr. Cotter. There has to be more information. And again, I think society as a whole, people don't want to get involved.
Or very loyal.
Very loyal. There you go. That's true. That's
Yeah.
very true.
That's something that came up. Somebody said, don't neighbors have cameras? Sheila Stahl says, it seems to me a possibility that Val, tired of jail time, spilled whatever he knew, which possibly led to enough information that would reduce his bail and push the charge of murder to Brad. And then somebody else said, do you think that there would be a change of venue if there is a trial?
Because of the high media attention, I mean, that request will absolutely be made. Whether it's granted or not is a different story.
It is a different story. And you have to wonder also what's going on in that community as people are sitting there and going through everyday life, and they have to drive past this home, and they have to drive past this park. I mean, that was part of what the neighbor said. When he saw the arguments, she started walking towards that greenbelt area that's in there, and he claims that he heard her scream according to the affidavit. So you have to wonder, how do you keep having normal life not knowing where one of your neighbors may be buried somewhere within your community? I mean, it's crazy.
And she was well known. She was a real estate agent. She was involved in so much. And maybe people are coming forward and we're just not hearing about it. Maybe they're doing that solely with law enforcement. But I hope that people are standing up for her. I really do.
Definitely.
Also worth noting, in the 25 minutes or so that we've been streaming here live on YouTube, we have learned that Olmos Park Police will be holding a news conference tomorrow, Friday at 2 p.m. The first real opportunity to field questions from the media. You know, there's going to be a lot of questions. How candid they're going to be is another story. I have found their police chief to be quite candid
Yes,
when he
yes.
is put in front of the cameras in that situation. In between, in terms of the emails and the phone calls, not so much, but it's understandable. They don't want to ruin their case. But that first initial press conference he gave, and then the day after, he answered all our questions.
He did, and then think about it. Now the Texas Rangers are also involved. This is a different beast. The Texas Rangers are a totally different beast. They do things their way. Now you're not dealing with city, you're not dealing with
yeah.
county, you're dealing with DPS, and they're best of the best investigators, according to many. So you have to now look at how many different agencies you have involved and who is the lead. I mean, you worked with the police department. How big is it when you have a lead in a case for you not to step on somebody else's toes?
Oh, it's huge. You know, earlier today when I had gotten a tip that they were walking a warrant, I was under the impression that it was BCSO that had walked the warrant.
Bexar County Sheriff's Office.
At the Bexar County Sheriff's Office, and the first thing that popped into my mind was, I don't think these agencies are going to really like that. You know,
Correct.
you take ownership of your investigation, especially big cases like this. and it stays with you and or with that particular agency. So in terms of ownership and in terms of following up on those leads, I do think that the Texas Rangers are perhaps the most equipped to follow these leads. I mean, they have so many different cases that are so tough to crack, and they're the people for the job.
Yeah, and I mean, Robert, and you know a little bit more about that area. I mean, Olmos Park, describe it to people that, you know, are watching from all over the country, and it's such a small community and a
Sure.
small police department. How, just paint a picture for them about it.
Wow, well, you're making me dig deep into my childhood nostalgia. I did grow up in Alamo Heights, or at least from 91 to 95. Moved to San Antonio, lived in Alamo Heights. I went to Cambridge Elementary, lived at the corner of Argyle and Patterson, which is not far from the Argyle Club. And so, I mean, yeah, it's a really tight-knit community. People oftentimes have lived there for a long time. You know, houses stay in the family. I mean, we saw, here's a reference, Val Cotter at his bond reduction hearing, there was references to, well, he can afford this because he has $1 million or $1.4 million home in the Dominion. Well, the defense's argument was, actually, that's my mom's house, or that's Val's mom's
wow,
house.
yes.
It's in a trust, and that
Yes.
trust can't be used for a bond, to post bond. So, I mean, that gives you a sense of,
Yes.
you know, money going down from generation to generation. And so they also said he had a $65,000 truck that was paid off. You know, no mortgage payments on that $1 million house. That was paid off. So, yeah, the people involved in this case are well off.
Yeah, and Jordan was sitting there today, and they were in two vehicles, and I know the photographer was also like, they're looking at me. They're looking at me.
Yes.
You notice things, right?
It's a small community, and so they notice when something is off. So we had heard that maybe this warrant was getting walked. We didn't know if they were going to take him and question him and where that would be. So we went back to Olmos Park Police Department, and people immediately notice when there's these two cars that don't belong there that are just kind of hanging out and waiting.
Yeah.
You can tell that people know each other. I was shocked by the amount of people walking around and greeting each other and, you know, walking dogs and talking, because you don't see that in every neighborhood.
Here's a little exercise we can do that I think might be instructive. Let's imagine you're assigned to the press conference tomorrow. You're assigned to the press conference tomorrow. You're assigned to the press conference tomorrow. What is the first question you're asking the police chief when he says, all right, I'll open it up for any questions?
What new information do you have that has led to this arrest and this upgrade, if you will, in charges?
I think I would ask, say something to the person that may still be out there that has information on this case that is preventing this family, preventing these 4 children from knowing where their mother is, so they can at least give her a proper burial if she is dead. That's what I would want to know.
I would want to know more about the specific types of evidence that they have already. I know they probably wouldn't be able to get super specific about what they have, but if they have search history, if they have more text messages, if they've got surveillance camera video, I would just want to know kind of in generalities, what are they going off of? And what do they need, if they need anything else that people may have?
What changed? Why now?
I do want to ask, Yami, because you cover crime in courts extensively, have you ever seen a defendant taken out of the Bexar County Jail and taken to a different location for further questioning? That struck me as odd.
Well, not for questioning, but in the Lena Sadar Keel case, the little girl that went missing, a 4-year-old, she's been missing now, it's going to be 3 years. They did take a suspect out and took him near the house earlier this year to try and point out an area where he claimed that her body had been. So other than that, not really. But again, there's a lot of things that we don't know that law enforcement are doing. That's their job, and they have to keep it under wraps. But yeah, I found it interesting. I know media was driving around, several different media here in town were driving around between Olmos Park, between Bexar County Jail. Like nobody knew, because this is not that common that they do it, you know?
Yeah. Something that I wanted to bring up, you know, we've seen in the past and we've covered in the past where families of individuals who have been murdered are upset with the DA's office because the murder case was dismissed. But I wanted to bring something up, and it's that if they proceed with this case, you really have to make sure things are buttoned up. You only get one bite of the apple once you're going for that trial. Once things start, you know, you really have to make sure that you have what you need to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. I mean, with Andre McDonald, he was convicted of manslaughter, for example. You know, in this case, I think it's very important for the public and also, you know, for us here at home, or homework, to realize that filing this case is a pretty significant step. And I understand that they can dismiss it and refile it easily, but even bringing these charges, it really strikes you as they have something.
I mean, think about it. We all text with sources all the time. Do you text exactly what you need if you're really concerned? I don't. I know that for sure. So you kind of have to wonder what else he texted his friend when he was telling him to get the gun and get the other stuff. I'm like, why would you text that?
Right.
And he was saying, this isn't the exact language, but social media is crucifying me. Yes. He was checking. He was looking to see what people were saying about all this when Suzanne went missing. I thought that was a very candid thing to say to someone. And obviously it's one of your best friends.
He says, you're all I have.
Yeah.
And I know I'm going to mess this up, but somebody told me, they're like, now think about it. You're in court, you're trying this case, and if you're the defense attorney and you say, you know, well, what if I told you right now that Suzanne's about to walk in the back door? Oh. If everybody turns around, there's your reasonable doubt.
That is, yes,
wow.
I've heard that anecdote before,
Yes.
and I was just thinking about that, you know.
So it makes you wonder, what do they have? If he went ahead and texted that, what else did he text that day? And again, you know, everybody's hoping, but now they've charged him with murder. So you have to really think in your head, there has to be enough there that they're pretty sure that she's dead.
Pat Sem says, if there was a plea deal, could it have been made today? In all likelihood, no. Usually this is after the state has provided discovery, when that is, you know, all evidence that they have against the accused individual. It would be premature to take any sort of plea deal without knowing what evidence does the state have against me.
And we should mention, you texted his defense attorney.
Yes, I did text his defense attorney, and I had asked him, you know, any comment. And initially, you know, earlier today when we were hearing that there was potentially going to be movement on this case, I had asked, is there anything that you can say? And he did not respond to that text message. But later, whenever the murder charge was officially filed, I had asked, do you have any comment on this? But his defense attorney has been very, you know, tight-lipped.
You should say, he said no comment.
Exactly.
Also, Maritza has been working on this. She's out of town right now, and she just told me to look at my text. She just received this from Bart Simpson via text. It is heartbreaking, but it brings our family some peace to know that authorities have gathered sufficient evidence to feel confident in moving forward with charges. This also helps us to come to terms with the reality that Suzanne is no longer with us, allowing us to begin a difficult grieving process and focus on rebuilding our lives, especially for the sake of the children and our extended family. We remain appreciative to all law enforcement involved for their professionalism in dealing with this situation.
Keep in mind, that's Brad's brother. His blood brother.
His brother. I mean, can you imagine?
Who is currently caring for the children.
Correct. Can you imagine what you have to explain to these kids? I mean, there's older ones, but then you have the little one. And this will remain forever out there, whatever's on social media, on the web. Someday you will look for your mother's name and your dad's name, and this is what they're going to find.
Can I also just say something that has struck me? We've covered our fair share of trials over the years, and they have the two different sides, you know, the defense's side and the prosecution side, the family members of the victim, the family members of the accused. And I would say 9 times out of 10, 10 times out of 10, the accused killer's family lines up behind them in lockstep and is Dad never did this, Dad could never do this, Dad is innocent, how could you even assume or accuse my dad of doing this? And I'm just struck by the fact that his brother is basically saying he's guilty, his grown daughter is saying he's basically guilty. I mean, can you recall that many instances like that where someone is breaking ranks?
No.
They even provided video footage from the gun vault where Brad kept his firearms, and also provided Olmos Park police with all of these firearms, and that's how they located that short barrel rifle that they ultimately charged Brad with federally. and then later on the fully automatic firearm.
And we're talking about this because all we have are the affidavits, what people are saying. That man is still presumed innocent until found guilty.
Right.
And now we have to wait. So it would be great if his defense attorney would speak, but we get it.
Sure.
This is what they do. But until he goes to court and he goes through a trial and they, a group of his peers decide that he's guilty.
Court of public opinion doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter. And then here's the other thing. I'm sorry. He comes from a very wealthy area of town. Can you imagine being stuck in that jail for as long as he's been there, not saying anything? And I understand that he only comes out for 1 hour that he gets to come out because it's a high profile case. I cannot imagine what is going through his head, and he has not said anything as far as we know.
All right. Any other thoughts before we wrap things up?
I just want to make sure that people watching know, to go back to something you said, Yami, to know that they have 4 children who could one day see all of this.
Yes.
I want the people watching to know we consider that in our coverage.
Oh, yeah.
When we make these decisions, we think about that because this is a big story, but these are their lives.
Correct.
So I just wanted to make sure that people know that because that's something that's very important to us as we cover this for you.
And it's hard. I mean, it's such a balance that you have to do. I'm a mom. I have children. To think about me being gone and not being able to be there raising my children and what is said of what happened to me someday. And many people in one of the groups on Facebook are her friends, and they all talk about wanting people to know that this woman was more than the crime that may have happened to her, that she was a mom, she was a daughter, real estate agent, a friend. So we have to keep that in mind also. But ultimately, there has to be justice for Suzanne.
50, yeah.
Well, I was just saying that I do think that there's also a lot of a lack of understanding, really, of domestic violence and how difficult it can be to escape a situation like this. She's a mother of 4. She has a life. She has, everything with this individual in particular, and to walk away from that as a result of domestic violence, that's difficult. It's very, very difficult.
It is hard. And, we all go through things like that with friends. I've had friends that have gone through this. And you have to think also, because I know her friends, some must be feeling bad or thinking twice, what could I have done? And I have gone through this with my own friends, where you know that they're the victim of domestic violence, and you try and you try and you try to get them out, and you cannot get them out. And you wonder, is the next call going to be somebody telling you that your friend is dead? And there's only so much you can do. And this happens in the best of families and in the worst of families. Rich homes, poor homes, it doesn't matter. It happens all over our communities, all over the United States.
Very much a developing story. 53-year-old Brad Simpson now charged with the murder of his wife, Suzanne Simpson. We do hope to learn more tomorrow, Friday at 2 p.m., when Olmos Park Police will hold their first news conference since this murder charge was announced. Until then, for Yami Virgen, Mariah Medina, and Jordan Elder, I'm Robert Price. Thank you so much for joining us.